We'll get things started real quick. First, just Coach, if you could give us a quick kind of your feedback, your thoughts on practice today and how everything went and what you're looking forward to in a rematch tomorrow against Los Angeles.
Yes, another day to just kind of sharpen up and talk through some adjustments for what we'll see for tomorrow. Understanding, the defensive prowess and presence of LA is strong, and how we can attack them in those areas. Some defensive adjustments, but all, all in all, a good day, good sharp day, and everyone looks ready to roll.
All right, Coach, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and open it up to questions. Percy, can you kick us off with our first question? Go ahead.
Hey, Coach. Just wondering, what is the status of Jewel Lloyd?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how she feels tomorrow. She was able to get up and down today. She looked good. And, we'll see how her body responds. So we'll, just looking forward and preparing her in the lineup. But understanding we have to wait and see what tomorrow brings.
I say, hey, and, just with like this one, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot or anything, but you've had like a few days to kind of think about this, just in terms of Candace, just what's happened there. How come that fit didn't quite work? And then you, as a first-time coach in this league, any lessons that you sort of took from that?
Yeah, I mean, kind of what I touched on before, just wasn't quite the correct fit for us, and wasn't what, on both sides, and coming from her perspective and ours, and just taking time to really work through some things my youthfulness in that is just sometimes things just don't work out. And as long as there is transparency, like with what's going on, in my opinion, we were talking through some things and understanding, just trying to adjust through some things with a new system, a new team, and things of that nature. No hard feelings. Candace is an amazing player, and she's done amazing things in our league. And obviously her career should be highlighted and will be highlighted someday. But even still, she has a lot of basketball to play. And I would just say that, it just didn't work. And, good, bad, and different. We have players here now that we're focused on. And obviously, Percy, the focus is LA right now and moving forward. So our transition to progress is just to make sure we are locked in with our players right now, and how can we improve and how can we get better, especially heading into this break.
Definitely awesome. And just this last one for me, and then it would seem that a player who's really taken advantage of that is Ezzy. And like you talked about that a bit on Sunday. Just before Friday, she had a stretch there of like 14 games where like it was really not good for her. Was there ever any concern for like the team during that stretch?
No, honestly. And I know sometimes, we look at the game and players' performances, but as a coach, you see what happens day to day. And, the preparation, Ezzy had a great off season as well. And, the type of player that she is, I wasn't concerned. I think it was just a matter of time for all of us to get, our comfort and to find our sweet spot, whatever that is. We're still learning each other. But as far as Ezzy, we've had her a couple of years now, and just I touch on it again, the type of player that she is, she's type of person that she is. She's a great teammate. She works very hard, and she stays the course. She doesn't waver. And so, obviously you talk about rotations, you talk about, consistent minutes and time and things of that nature. I would always talk to her, and she was always, ready. So I think that's what we're seeing is, the preparation and just an opportunity to kind of showcase what we all know she can do.
I hear. All right, Coach. Thanks for your time.
No problem.
Thanks, Percy. Jeff Brown, go ahead, Jeff.
Hey, Coach, how are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing good, thank you. So I see that you guys re-signed India Jones to a 7-day contract. Is that a situation that you went to Talisa about, or did she come to you saying, hey, I'm thinking about adding her back to the team? Like, how did that work?
Yeah, both. It's obviously we're in a situation now that we had an ability to bring in another player. And the brainstorming came with understanding, what players were available, but also, there's some familiarity with Indy, and we had a chance to see her at camp. And honestly, she showed a lot of things that we didn't see, just scouting her in college. She has a mind for the game, super athletic, excellent rebounder, picked up our schemes and all of our just nuances of our offense and defenses like super quick, relatively quick for a rookie. So, there's collaboration in that. Obviously, Talisa has the last say. But at that, collaboratively, we both agreed that this is a good player to have at this junction of our season.
Awesome. And then if Jules not able to go, I assume Piff most likely fills back into that spot. Obviously, she played very well in the other game on Sunday.
For sure. Piff did an amazing job, and, extended minutes for her. She was able to be very productive, obviously on the offensive end, but the things that she did defensively as well. Veteran and understands, her role, and understands how to be a great teammate as well. So she'll slide right in if Jewel cannot play. Yes.
Thank you, Coach.
No problem.
Thanks, Chip. And Adler, go ahead, Em.
Hi, Coach. Just wanted to ask, so going back to the Sparks game, in the third quarter when the Sparks sort of closed the gap right before you switched to the 3-2 for the fourth quarter, while they were going on their run, it looked like they were mucking up a lot of your actions when you really only had a couple shooters on the court. I know that becomes a problem with the rotation when Jewel's out. Is there an adjustment you've been looking into for that?
Yeah, the thing that LA presents is just defensively, they're a tough team. They get us off of our spots, no matter who was on the floor. Honestly, we got a little bit extended. We weren't in a flow. We weren't patient and waiting and setting up screens to use screens. So, in those moments, it's important to just kind of lock in a little bit more, do our work early, square up, be a little bit more aggressive, and kind of attack their aggression with poised aggressiveness. And so, we went over these things today. We highlighted it. We looked at it on film, and understanding that it wasn't just that quarter, but in general, they're a very good defensive team. And I think there's a matter of withstanding that pressure early on and loosening them up a little bit more in order for our drives to be a little bit cleaner, in order for our passes to be a little bit cleaner, in order for us to get in that playing area a little bit tighter throughout the game. So a lot of adjustments, but understanding that, this is something that they thrive on, is playing super hard on that end of the floor.
Great, thank you.
I'm 2 for 2 on unmuting myself. I apologize for that. Thanks, Em. Christos, go ahead.
Hello, Coach. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm fine. You mentioned before the adjustments. So my question to you is, how satisfied you are on the way that your players react on your adjustments through the season so far?
Say that part again. How do I feel like players?
How satisfied you are about the way that your players react on the adjustments?
Yeah, sometimes it does take a timeout to just kind of lock back in, and a lot of times we're able to come back out and execute, or come back out, score, come back out with a different mindset. Obviously, having a veteran savvy team, one of the best leaders in the world, and Sue to help in that area on the floor. I think it's been a good response. It's been good to just kind of talk through things, and they understand. At a lot of times, I'm looking to them to listen to their adjustments, or to listen to what they feel, because they're in it, they're playing it. We see it. Sometimes it feels a little bit different. So I think they've done an excellent job of just responding when we need to respond.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, thanks, Christos. Doug, why don't you wrap us up today? Go ahead, Doug.
Hey, Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you.
I'm curious. I mean, obviously, you try to win every game, but this is a weird situation with the new Commissioner's Cup, that like these 3 games are kind of like playoff games, because you need to win them potentially to get into the Commissioner's Cup championship. How do you approach it? I mean, it's weird to say they must win, but like they kind of are if you want to win that, or you get a chance to win that championship.
Yeah, for sure. And you already know the competitive nature of our players. And that came even in the last part of the Sparks game. Just understanding with the rules of the Commissioner's Cup, points matter as well. And so, it is a balance of understanding that that game is fun, it's new, it is something that we sure, one of our goals to play in, but also those games are important to have for us to continue to get to where we need to, as far as flow, as far as feel, as far as chemistry with one another. So I think it's twofold. It's you go into the game with the preparation and mindset that we need to win these games for a bigger picture. The Commissioner's Cup is something that doesn't really affect our overall record, but it's something that as a player and as a competitor, if it's there to play a game for money and benefit, our teams, our families, then I think that's something that, is very important to our team. But in the grand scheme of things, these games mean so much more than that just one game.
Do you coach differently? I mean, you kind of said like the points matter. So like you're up 12 with a minute left or up 15. Do you leave the starters out there to try to get another bucket, so to speak, or you don't hold the ball at the end? Like just little things, you never know what it comes down to as far as like points matter.
It matters, and it kind of is you experience that in like Euro Cup, you know what I mean, overseas. That's something that's not really it's new to our game here, but yeah, it is important. And like I said, in that game, that's what happened in that last possession. We needed the points. And just to solidify, whether it's our record, whether it's understanding that that matters if we want to be in that game, that point spread and the difference in that. And then understanding how to play the game. It's kind of like gamesmanship in a way to understand if we want to make sure we have our spot in it, or have a lead in the score and all those things, that every point matters, especially with down the stretch. All of these games are Commissioner's Cup games.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Doug. Coach, we'll let you go. Thanks for joining us. I'll see you tomorrow for our pregame media session at 5:45 p.m. All right, and we'll go ahead and bring in Sue Bird here for the next part of our media time. Sue, are you there with us? And Sue's going to need just a minute, so we're going to take a quick break. We'll wait for Sue to rejoin us here in just a minute. Yeah. Let's start with Percy Allen. Percy, go ahead and kick us off.
Awesome. Hello, Sue Bird. I've got two quick ones for you. Just in the past 2 years, what have you seen in Ezzy, and where do you think she can go, just in terms of this game and her talent?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree we've seen glimpses of what Ezzy can do and what Ezzy can bring to the floor. I mean, obviously, anyone at her size, the way she rebounds, the way she blocks shots, it's kind of a given. But I think what we see the glimpses of are the times where she's driving to the basket, even the times where she gets ISO'd, maybe one-on-one on the block. Every now and then, she has the ability to step out and hit a shot and make you pay if you drop off. So, for somebody who's 21, it's a pretty good sign when you see these glimpses. And I think as she gets older and she gets more confident in her game and gets more comfortable in this league, you'll just see what I'm referring to glimpses now will probably turn into a more consistent game, a consistent all-around game that she brings every single night. I think it's easy to forget with her just how young she is. And obviously she's been a professional longer than maybe an American who's 21. She's still really young, and then still, I mean, the sky's the limit for her, just in terms of what we've seen so far, though.
Mm-hmm. Hey, and then just this last from like being here, your old coach, Chino, he was on a podcast recently with Renee Montgomery, and they were talking about the NIL that's happening in the NCAA, and he said something to the effect that there's a chance that college players could be paid more than WNBA rookies, and which got me thinking, is the college game more popular than the WNBA? And if so, why? And if so, and if that's the case, then how can the WNBA change that?
Well, first of all, that's an interesting statement because it's a little bit of a blanket one that I don't think you can make in the way this is all going to unfold. This whole name and likeness thing is very much an individual player thing. I think everyone's gonna get impacted, both negative, well, not negatively, but we'll have more opportunity, I guess, and that's going to be a player by player. But it's gonna work itself out player by player. And then you assume if somebody does well in the college ranks, they're probably going to take that with them to the pro ranks. So I love to argue with him, so this is going to be fun. You're only in college for 4 years. I've been a professional for way longer than that, so I'm pretty sure I've made more money as a professional. But anyways, back to what we're saying. Yeah, I personally think that women's basketball is kind of backwards at times in this way. The emphasis we put on college basketball is amazing. And this is one of those scenarios where don't take what I say as saying college basketball shouldn't get the attention. They should. They've earned it. They deserve it. What should also happen is those same exact players, when they go to the WNBA, should get equal attention, maybe more, considering they're going to be playing in the WNBA longer. You're going to get to follow their careers for a longer period of time. Obviously, you know, college basketball has just been around longer, so they're able to build those fan bases. I think this part will probably answer your question even more. You're connected to a university, and this is a special thing. We all know, everybody on this call right now who went to whatever school you went to, shit, it could be middle school, it could be high school. You're always going to represent. You're always going to be connected. I think what we've seen in the NCAA tournament is special. The way March Madness is set up is special. And there's something about that, you know, and rightfully so, there's something about that always gives college basketball on the women's side, just a little, it's got a little extra to it in terms of popularity, in terms of coverage, in terms of the fan base. So to say it's more popular, I think, yeah, and when it comes to March Madness, there's not a lot of events that are competing with that. From what I understand, you know, the women's Final Four this year is if not outdoing, very close to, in terms of viewership, even the NBA conference finals. This is a special tournament. And the WNBA doesn't have its own special tournament. Who knows, maybe the Commissioner Cup turns into that. So again, I just wanna also, like, if you're gonna use my quotes, just make sure you're saying, like, this is one of those scenarios where I'm not trying to say college basketball doesn't deserve that. I'm trying to say they do. And the WNBA also does.
I got you, Sue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
You gotta be
Percy.
sure these days, guys. You gotta be sure these days.
Thanks, Percy. Yeah, why don't we go over to you? Yeah, Bonzo.
Thank you. Hey, Sue. Yalbon Sue, WRHU over in New York. I know it's a long way from Seattle, but I want to ask about your Olympic experience. The first time you made the team, it was probably emotional. You know, it was probably a very proud moment. But looking at it this year, you know, what's going through your head? What is the feeling knowing that you've made yet another team? Because we all know this is not your first rodeo.
Yeah, no, it's not. You know, in some ways, I think when you're first named to the team, you have all the same emotions you did when you were first named, because it's always an honor, no matter, you know, how old you are, no matter how many times it's been. I think for me, you know, when I was 14 or 15 years old, that was it. The Olympic team was it. That was what I could strive for. There was no WNBA. It was shortly coming, but that was really, you know, what I kind of viewed as the pinnacle of women's basketball. So every time I get selected, it's that 14-year-old kid who's getting picked, you know, so it's never going to get old in that regard. Now, what changes is the fact that I've been there, I've experienced it. So I could go each Olympics. That has changed in terms of I knew what to expect, or maybe I wanted to make sure I went and saw this event or that event because I didn't get to the last time. So I've been lucky to be able to do that. The other part of it is my role has changed. So even though I'm going to another Olympics, my role has always changed from you know, year to year. So that also makes it just a brand new experience. And I think, you know, this time what's interesting is, you know, you can argue that 2016 was, I mean, looking back on it, you're kind of like, dang, was that the best Olympic team ever? I don't know. It's kind of up there. And now we have a lot of newcomers. That wasn't really the case last time. We had some newcomers, but their names were Elena Deldon and Brianna Stewart. They'd kind of already proven that they were literally some of the top players in the world. So now we have a lot of newcomers. So this year, I bring this all up to say, every Olympics is a little bit different in that you're trying to put these pieces together. And so even though it's my 5th Olympics and people think I get bored, believe me, there is nothing boring about these experiences. If anything, they're some of the most challenging.
You touched on my follow-up there. I was going to ask what separates this year from all the other years. So let me switch gears now, looking at Brianna Stewart. She's your teammate, and now both of you are going to be playing for Team USA. So what do you hope, or what do you think that she can take from all those other great players and add to what is already a pretty phenomenal game of hers?
I think for Stewie, it's really building off of her 2018 USA basketball experience. You know, the World Cup that was in Tenerife. She finished MVP. And I think for her, that was a step in the direction of really understanding that she was going to have to be a go-to player for this team. Because, like I said, we're trying to fit these pieces together. We're trying to make it work in a very short period of time, and it can be a unique challenge for that one player to kind of stand out and show themselves. And I think Stewie did that a couple years ago. And so I feel like we'll just continue to see her doing that. She's obviously an even better player now, just by nature of being a little bit older, a little more mature. So I definitely see her being a player that we can count on throughout the entire tournament.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Well, thanks, Yao. Let's go to Doug Feinberg. Doug, go ahead.
Hey, Sue. I thought the takeaway from your statement before is that you like to argue with Coach Ariema, and he's usually wrong. Was that not the media that he's usually wrong? That wasn't the media takeaway from that?
Listen, he's usually wrong because he'll say, I always think I'm right.
Huh. I'll make sure I had the right takeaway from that.
Yeah. I don't even know what he was trying to say. I don't know. I don't even know. I'd have to go listen to the podcast. So I'm gonna have to do that when I get off, because I'm like, you can't make more money in 4 years than you can in 20. That's just impossible.
I think the point was basically like, you can make 40,000 as a rookie in the WNBA. You can make 100,000 as a NIL thing if you're Paige Beckers or someone else of that level. I think.
But okay, but if Paige Beckers is making $100,000 in her off the court endeavors, why would that stop when she became a pro?
I agree. Have a good argument with him about it. I'm sure you will.
I will.
My question is this. The Commissioner's Cup is new, and obviously it's different, and it's a chance to win something. There's money involved. How do you guys approach it? Ask Coach Quinn this. Like, is this like you're trying to make the playoffs right now because you can't really afford to lose a game the rest 3 if Vegas doesn't lose? I mean, how do you approach as a player? Like, we got a chance to make this thing and such. Like, what's the mindset?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think what's interesting is the mindset. I bet it's the same for probably all teams. I mean, I'm not in those locker rooms, but it's just a guess. I bet the conversation surrounding the Commissioner Cup now versus April, I bet they weren't even having conversations when training camp started. And I bet even early on in May, when you were in these Commissioner Cup games, you know, for us, I remember moments of, you know, winning some of the early games, and it might have been like someone at the end of at the end of the game in the huddle when the game's over might be like, "Hey guys, by the way, that was a Commissioner's Cup." And I think now it's a conversation in a lot of locker rooms for the teams that are really trying to get in. We happen to be, you know, one of those lucky teams. So I think now the conversations have changed. And what's exciting about that is this is obviously the first year. So I bet, you know, next year and you know, years to come, it'll be something that coaches are stressing and talking about when you have a Commissioner Cup game. It'll be noted and talked about, especially when it comes to the point differentiation. Because we had a scenario where we were beating, you know, a team early on by a lot of points. And then in the fourth quarter, you know, it went from like a 30-point game to a 10-point game, and we still got the win. So we were all happy. And looking back, you know, that could be something that plays a role, but we weren't really having those conversations just yet. The good news is, like, we're all used to it from Europe. This is how Europe works. So we're all very familiar. You just have to have the conversations. But now we are, and I think so that was like the beat around the bush, but to get to your point or to your question about mindset, I don't think it changed. I think it's just something, you know, you go into every game wanting to win anyways. And maybe this puts a little more, you know, maybe it wakes you up a little bit more, kind of makes you more aware of certain things. But once you're out there, you're still just playing the game. You're still just trying to win. I don't know if the coaching, if maybe this is a question for coaches, if they sub different or feel different about it. But I think when you're a player, you're just out there trying to win. And yes, it is always, like we've talked about, prior to our last game, our last 4 games of the till the Olympic break were Commissioner Cup games, all 4 of them, 4 in a row. So it's like we got to be on our P's and Q's for 4 games. So it's something we've talked about. But again, I think once you get in the game and you're playing, I think it's not that different from a regular season game. You just might be a little more aware of some things.
And just a quick follow-up, since you mentioned winning games and such, I know you're not focused on it yet, but the All-Star game next week, do you think it's gonna be an All-Star game, or is it gonna be, USA is trying to get ready for the Olympics?
No,
Is it-
I think for us, it's the first opportunity to play together as a team. It'll be our first chance to get out there, to put the uniforms on, to be around each other in a game-like experience. I think it'll be very similar to when we played, what they call themselves, like the WNBA Elite in 2006. I forget what they call it. It was all the like quote unquote younger players, except now it's a team of players that got voted in as all-stars. I mean, we've all experienced this before, but I think for USA basketball, it's again, it's just an opportunity for us to be in a game-like environment, which, we're not going to get many. So we're definitely going to try to make the most of it. And that's really, I mean, it is what it is, right? He's got to go out there and play. And obviously all-star games are more for the show, but I think for us, we're just going to try to, play well together and get acclimated.
Thanks, Sue. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Doug. Let's go to Pepper Pursley. Pepper, how are you doing tonight?
Hey Sue, so great to see you again. So there's a lot of this talk about great players and GOATs and all that type of stuff, but in your opinion, what skills define a great basketball player?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things you can look at. I think, an individual's play, the impact they have on the court, whether it's, they're a great scorer, whether it's they're a great defender, a great rebounder, whatever the case may be. I think individually you can definitely assess players. But to me, and this is going to come as no surprise, I think it has to be that on top of the fact that you're able to help your team win. I think that is a huge element of it. But I totally appreciate that these GOAT conversations can come in so many shapes and sizes, and you can argue up and you can argue up and down about all kinds of different categories of it. I think that's what's fun about sports is these arguments. So I'm all for them. So if you ever want to have one, just let me know. You can pick the criteria and we'll go at it. Because I think that's great. I think when you're having these conversations, that's what helps push sports forward. But I definitely think something that usually settles GOAT conversations, and it definitely settles mine, is when you start to lay out the championships.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, Pepper. Let's go to M. Adler. M.
Hi. I know when you were on Slap and Glass, the podcast, a couple weeks ago, you talked about picking your spots to attack more on offense as you've gotten older and making better and smarter passes. I was wondering how that applies to the defensive side, especially, in Klopp's SOS scheme where you got to have harder hedges, or you're like picking traps more, that kind of stuff.
Did you call it Klopp's SOSD? Klopp's defense.
Yeah.
Klopp's defense has a name?
Yeah, it's the SOS.
The SOS? It's the first time I've heard that.
Oh, I know. I know when I brought it up, Noel Quinn also called that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think as you get older, it's just experience teaches you a lot. So you just can, the same way you can kind of pick and choose things offensively and kind of have an understanding of the game, you can do that defensively as well. Just, a lot of what defense is being in the right place at the right time, understanding angles, understanding the player you're guarding. That, I think for me, as I've gotten older, that's been a big part of my defense, just understanding players and their preferences. Because I'm a player, I have preferences, and I understand, and I know when somebody tries to take those away, it makes the game a little bit harder, right? Great players, they have multiple preferences, but sometimes players only have one or two. And so if you can limit that in any way, it's going to give you a little bit of an advantage, or help you, I should say, change the advantage. So it's definitely what I try to do. And it comes in, it comes in by ways of the one-on-one defense aspect of it, but also when you're helping, right? Understanding, this isn't really a great example, but if that player is going to pop or they're going to roll, does so-and-so like to go left or they like to go right, and just kind of trying to be there and be in the right place to be a good help defender.
Gotcha. And then just sort of following up on that, given this game, everyone's always pointing a lot and talking to each other. You're usually looks like one of the more vocal ones. How do you go about making sure that you're helping your teammates out in that end and looking at everyone while you're still making your assignments and your rotations?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you see on defense is chemistry based, not that different from offense. You know, it's a lot of chemistry. It's a lot of going through things in practice and kind of being being comfortable with knowing that if you're in a scramble, you know, if we're in Klopp's SOS defense and we're scrambling around, all that is at that point is just communication and really just one person being decisive. Once one player is decisive, everybody can play off of that. So for me, I think being vocal, trying to be as vocal as possible, trying to talk, trying to tell people where to go. Usually, if it's not with my voice, it's definitely with my pointing, which you seem to have noticed. So that's just another way of you know, being a good teammate out there and helping. And I think you've seen that in my offensive game. It's always kind of been there in my defensive game as well. But like I said, defense is like a team thing, so it's chemistry just as much as anything.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, thanks, Em. Let's go to Christos. Christos, go ahead.
Hey, Shu, how are you? I would like to ask you, 1 week ago, you had a tough loss in overtime against the Las Vegas Aces. Those results, how have you handled those results, both you personally and the whole team, to get better?
Yeah, I mean, I think I may have said this, you know, shortly after the game. The bummer about losing that game was, you know, losing a tiebreaker with a team that if the season ended right now, it means they would be first. You know, if we finished the season right now and we were tied, they would be first. So we lost a tiebreaker. There was Commissioner Cup implications. So obviously those two elements, losing that game was a big, big bummer. But it was also, you know, a regular season game, you know, in the month of June. I think it was June, maybe it was July, I don't even know what today is. So, you know, it's just at that point in the season, it's also just a way of understanding your team, where they are, you know, how we reacted to playing against a team like Vegas. You know, because there was some points in that game where we had the lead and where we could have maybe extended it enough where we didn't have to go into overtime, right? To their credit, they made big play after big play to get to that point. So, you know, I think if anything, it's just a game to learn from. Would we have loved to have won? Absolutely. But I think you need to learn from those games, you know, win or lose. So I think that's what we all took from it. We understand that, you know, like I said, for the two reasons I said, it was a bummer to lose, but at the end of the day, you have to learn from it and hopefully get better.
And the follow-up, the Olympic Games in Tokyo are coming up. How you try to prepare yourself on the next games with the Storm, and how big deal for you is to win the 5th gold medal with a national team?
Yeah. Excuse me. I mean, I'm actually, the only thing I'm thinking about in terms of the Olympics right now is my packing list. And like, you know, I don't want to forget my passport. Otherwise, I'm really not thinking about the Olympics yet. You know, I think that would be a disservice to the Storm. Similarly, once that final game is over and you know, all of us get to Vegas, I think we should all completely focus on USA basketball and not worry about our WNBA teams. To me, that's how I operate. I think it allows me to, again, just stay focused and stay present, stay in the moment. I can obviously think forward and think about, you know, what the experience in Tokyo will be like, and you know, hopefully we are able to, you know, achieve our goal, which is always a gold medal. And that would mean a lot, but you know, we have so much to do before we get to that point. So much work has to be done. So it's hard to like get there mentally. And like I said, my bags aren't even packed yet. So I got other things to worry about. How many shoes am I bringing? Like there's bigger fish to fry right now.
I got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Christoph. Then let's wrap up things today with Jeff Brown. Jeff, go ahead.
What the heck?
Jeff, you there?
Can you hear me?
There we go. We got you. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I hit the unmute button like 3 times or 4 times and it didn't work. But anyways, Sue, so Pepper brought up the GOAT chat, and usually GOAT chat is usually always centered within the WNBA itself. But what I would like to know from you is, would you consider yourself the greatest athlete in Seattle sports history? And if not, who would be?
I mean, I kind of gave my criteria, and I think, from what I understand, there's not been a winner, like myself. I mean, even like Stewie, even like Lauren, like multiple, a player that has won multiple championships in the same city. That's rare in a lot of cities. And we have that here with the Storm with not just myself, with other players as well. So I don't know. I mean, this is kind of awkward to talk about, but the truth is, I think if you were to, pick your GOAT criteria, and if it's winning, and we want to have that conversation, and you kind of took the names off of everybody's resumes and just read the resumes, I mean, wouldn't it kind of speak for itself at that moment? Why does gender come into play? For some reason, it always does in these conversations when you mix sports, as if male sports are harder than female sports, which I don't buy into. So that to me is how I would answer it. It's like if you were to take away all the names and just looked at resumes, and I would throw Stewie and Lauren in there as well. It's not just about me, but I think the success we've had with this franchise, it has kind of been unmatched in this city. And that is not to take away from any of the other people. I mean, Gary Payton and Sean Kemp never won, yet they've had a huge impact on Seattle. We see that, you see it walking down the street even today. And obviously the same with Russell Wilson. You look at the impact he's had both on winning and, with his Super Bowl ring and, what he does off the field, his foundation, the things him and Sierra are doing are incredible. I could go on. Ken Griffey Jr., his story, he's the kid. It's so much fun to hear about his stories. I could go on, the list goes on. But if you're just talking about winning, I don't know how a Storm player isn't at the tippy top of that conversation.
I agree with you. And then just last one from me, like with everything, the Olympics, WNBA, media with us, media outside of us, how do you manage it all? That's a lot of, very time consuming.
Yeah, I say no to Jeff a lot, so there's that. No, I mean, it's like anything. It's like, I don't know, how does a college athlete manage school and sports? How does, how does Jeff manage his job and having, 3 kids? And everybody on this call is juggling. I think we're all juggling. So you just have to, be smart with your time, balance it, and know when it's, know if you're kind of in over your head, it's okay to say no. So I think that's something that, all of us athletes are learning. And it has nothing to do with, there's no negative vibes around that. It's just sometimes if it's too much, it's okay to say, no, I have too much going on today. I have to do this another day or not at all. So yeah, it's just balance. It takes time to learn all that, but eventually you do.
For sure. Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
And we're going to have to wrap. John, I appreciate you joining us late, but we've got to wrap it up. I got to get Sue off. She's got a heart out right now. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And we'll be back with you tomorrow night for the game against the Sparks. Talk to you later.